Hello and welcome back to the Football Hipsters podcast. Let's talk football. My name is Kris. I'm your host, and it's been a couple of, it's been about a week and a half, I think, since we last came to you with a one-on-one chat. So we thought, what's better than a one-on-one? A three-on-one, an orgy of football, if you will. There's a thought. Certainly not social distancing, is it? So let me introduce my panel to you today. Coming from upstairs, downstairs. We'll first start in the top left-hand corner. Good afternoon to you, Josh. Busy week for you, I would imagine, with all the EFL goings on.
Oh, it's been an absolute nightmare. I can't get my head around it. Or at least that's what I tried to do this afternoon, to work out who's going up, who's going down, PPG, what's not PPG, and which chairman are shouting at rival fans, because there's many of those as well.
Yes, we'll certainly talk about the Peterborough chairman, I think, at some point. Don't you live near the offices? You could just pop over and just put your head over the wall and ask what's going on, couldn't you?
I could if there was anyone there, but, you know.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Times are hard. They're all working remotely. So I've just got to shout
loudly and hope for the best. Yeah. There won't be any shouting going on in Spain tonight, or will there? Who knows? But La Liga returns this evening, so we'll be certainly talking to Mr. Joel Meloir about that. How you doing, Joel? You all right?
I'm good. Excited for this.
Good.
It feels like this week's dragged in the build-up to it, but it's I mean, it's good. What a start as well.
Yes.
The Bill Derby. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and it will be all those new things, but I think we'll get used to it pretty quick. But yeah, I mean, it's practically La Liga every day now for 6 weeks.
Yes, yeah, indeed, and we'll
quite a thought, really.
We'll certainly we'll come to you in a minute for a bit of an update on where the league stands and whatnot, because I think people are still trying to work out who's where and where the league tables are and everything in between. So we will certainly do that. And of course, we've got a league that is ongoing and has been for a little while, and some interesting results, as well as a midweek cup round as well. So we are, of course, speaking about Germany, and Drew will have us across that. How you doing, Drew? You all right?
Oh, just shouting from the rooftops still.
Yes,
but I'm good.
Are you keeping safe? That's the most important thing.
Not even close at this point. It's just, it's fine.
It's not been a fun week in the US, has it? By any means,
or two or three,
or a
couple years, but it's fine. I'm good.
Yeah, we will certainly touch on the events and how it affects sport in a little while with you as well. So we'll certainly be doing that. Apologies, we couldn't get Lala this evening. She's got a bit of a family emergency, so she'll be back with us soon. We haven't fired her, don't worry, it's all fine. Right, so as promised, we're going to start in Spain because the La Liga action returns. Just before we get into, as you mentioned there, Joel, the Sevilla derby is tonight, recording on the 11th of June, time of recording, by the way. What's happened to the second division and all that's in between? Has that all been called off completely? Is it now just La Liga?
No. The Ligue Adelante has come back as well, so that kicked off last night. So they're following the same regime as La Liga. So Vallecano played last night. So yeah, it's pretty much resuming the season, to be honest, as we go on from this point. So I think Spain's interestingly quite prepared for it, and also got some plans to get fans into the stadium before the end of the season too.
Yeah.
So in this 6-week period.
Is it Tebas, the president?
Yeah, Javier Tebas is the president of La Liga. Yeah. So he's openly saying today that we should have fans in the stadium, not 10 or 20% capacity by the end of the 6-week period. Which is really good.
He's quite in with the is it the medical field that he's quite well versed in terms of his knowledge of what's going on. So I guess he's got a bit of an inside track as to how things will be managed. So that'll be interesting to see. We're talking with the leagues all coming back. Promotion and relegation is exactly as it was at the start of the season, and for all the leagues.
Yeah. So interesting that the bottom of the tables is interesting in the La Liga as the top, to be honest. You've got Espanyol being down there all season. You've got Celta Vigo just above relegation. So and Eibar, surprisingly, are dragged back into it. So understandably, those who are just above relegation was probably desperate for it to end as it was. But now it's kind of like the Premier League, where it's a relegation battle, but not like the Premier League. There's definitely a title race waiting to happen now, and they fight for the top 4 too. So there's quite a lot to play for, to be honest. Over the next round of fixtures, I'm just looking now. So we played 27. So yeah, there's 11 games left. So there's quite a lot to go for in this period. It's going to be quite interesting how it pans out, especially the relentless nature of it to cram it in 6 weeks. Yeah. So it's going to be pretty full on, to be honest.
It's all go, isn't it? Looking at the table as it stands, Barca 2 points clear above Real Madrid. When I say as it stands, as it has stood for a number of months, we should say. We've got the Sevilla derby tonight, which is, for those not in the know, it's Real Betis versus Sevilla. Sevilla currently sitting in third. I was reading an article, I think it was either Graham Hunter or Guillaume Balaguer was saying that the Sevilla coach is under pressure. How is that the case when they're third? I mean, I appreciate that they have only got a 1 point cushion over fourth Sociedad and joint fourth Getafe. Atletico Madrid on 45 points in sixth. But there is pressure on the Sevilla coach, whereas Betis, I think I'm right in saying their last game was against Real Madrid, which they won.
Yeah. So they beat. I think Lopetegui he's had a kind of traumatic 3-year period. You think about how the Madrid job turned out for him. If you think about how the World Cup turned out for him, didn't get to the World Cup and now he's at Sevilla. So I think he's feeling the pressure for that. I think that they'll definitely wait till the end of the season. Interestingly, I saw Guillaume Balaguer on La Liga TV yesterday, basically saying Unai Emery's been offered a job in Spain, and everybody's kind of speculating where that is, whether that's Barcelona, whether it's back to Sevilla, whether it's back to Valencia. No one quite knows where that is, whether it's Atletico Madrid if Simeone is going to go, because Simeone's assistant has gone. So there's definitely whether that's increasing the pressure on Lopetegui, I don't know, but there's definitely something in that. Whether it'd go back to Sevilla, who knows? But it was very, very, very successful. So I think that might be ratcheting up the pressure on him as well, to be honest.
Yeah, Barcelona, that would be quite the story, wouldn't it? Not good enough for Arsenal to manage Barcelona. That would be a thing. How do you see the game tonight going? Because obviously it's a game that's very well known for its atmosphere, which we're not really going to have tonight. So do you think that's going to affect it, or will it still be a pretty decent game?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Be able to tell after 5 minutes, I guess. I think this is the same situation as when Dortmund played Schalke, isn't it? That interesting was a derby, the first game back, and it was built up. And then I think if you remember, the tempo was flat for the first 20 minutes, then it kind of picked up. So whether the crowd will have an impact on that, but it is one of the most vocal in terms of the crowd, derbies in Europe, I'd say, the atmosphere and things. So it's going to be lacking. I mean, for the viewer on TV, it's going to be lacking because they're doing all of this artificial sound via EA Sports and using that to kind of build the atmosphere up. But whether the players obviously they're hailing sound, so they'll definitely feed off the crowd anyway. So it's hard to say. There'll be some tempo to it, I'm sure, because there's a lot to play for more for Sevilla than Betis, but there's definitely something in it. But it's hard to say. Like I say, you can judge it after 5 minutes. I think you'll be able to gauge it after 5 minutes of how the tempo sets off.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if there's any fans on the roof like there was in Porto last night.
I saw this. Yeah,
absolutely nuts. Just in terms of where the table sits, am I right in saying we've still got a Clasico to play?
No.
They have played them both. Okay, right. So
if you think it was just, I think it was February, Madrid beat Barca 2-0. Madrid are not playing the games at the Bernabeu.
Right. Okay.
They're renovating the Bernabeu, which was already planned in. This summer they brought it forward when the pandemic took hold, so they're playing all the remaining games at the training ground.
Oh really? Okay.
So they've got like a mini stadium there. It holds 6,000, so it's an actual stadium. It's not just a training pitch, it's an actual stadium, but it's where they train. It's where they train every day, so there's a theory that they'll be more used to that than they would the Bernabeu. Maybe because they're used to being on it most days. So we'll see in terms of that. Interestingly, Atletico Madrid offered them use of the Wanda. I don't quite understand, but so no. But that was the first thought about a Clasico at a training ground. But obviously that's not going to happen because they've played two. Whether they would have done all this if they'd known that they had a Clasico left to play. So the Betis game for Madrid, beating Madrid, was the massive massive boost for Barcelona because they lost the Clásico, they were behind in the title race, everything was very negative. It'll be interesting to see how this goes and what Barcelona's priority is, whether it's to maximise this 6-week period and go for the league, or to hold something slightly back and go for the Champions League. Whereas Madrid, I think, will focus everything on winning the league, largely because they're down against Man City in terms of the first leg, but also I think they need. I think that it's the two teams have got completely separate priorities now. I think Barcelona is to start winning Champions Leagues, Madrid is to start winning leagues.
Yeah.
Because if you think about the last 10 years, it's been in direct correlation of what they've both won, really. We had one complete success in Europe, one periodically successful in Europe, and one really successful in the league, and the other not so.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see how it pans out. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it comes back and how it goes, to be honest, and who comes back in form. What's happening for every team, like we know, is every player's fit now, near enough. So every squad is full with fit, with what you class as fit players. Whether everyone's fit or not, I don't know. But Madrid have got Hazard and Asensio back. Barca have got Suarez back. Diego Costa's back fit for Atletico Madrid. Guedes is fit for Valencia, and so everybody's back fit now. So every squad's going to be full and utilising the 5 subs, I would think.
Yeah. And it will be interesting to see how that 5-sub rule pans out across Europe. The only other thing I just wanted to touch on as well in Spain, down at the bottom, you kind of mentioned there in your initial roundup, Celta Vigo are very much in a relegation fight. So you look at Espanyol, Leganés, Mallorca. Please stay up, Mallorca. They're sort of in the relegation spots at the moment, but Mallorca are only a point behind Celta Vigo, and Eibar are only a point ahead of them in 16th. That's probably the biggest club down there, would you say, in terms of at risk of going down? I still remember them being a European club.
Celta Vigo,
or in Europe, I should say.
Yeah. But also Espanyol. Espanyol of heavy Chinese investment. A few years ago, it's not quite worked out for them. They spent big in January to try and alleviate the situation. It's kind of worked, but they've been down there all season. But Celta Vigo would be surprised if they went. I think you could draw the line about Valladolid in 15th. I think anything above that is probably safe. But again, it's hard to work out, who's going to come back in form, isn't it? So Eibar on a terrible run before the break. They may come back with a fresh kind of approach. I'm sure most teams will. So it'll be interesting to see who comes back in form. But Vigo got a good team. Rafinha and Inigo Aspas, and they've got a really good team. So I'd be surprised if Vigo went, to be honest. I think it will be, looking at it again, I think it will be the bottom 3 that go, if I'm totally honest. Just because Espanyol are 6 points away from any type of safety. So they're going to have to put one hell of a run together now to get near safety. But it might have focused minds, and it might have focused the squad in terms of getting everybody back fit. So it's hard to say how it's going to work out.
It's like you said, isn't it? It is kind of it's like that form kind of thing goes out the window, doesn't it? Based upon what we've seen previously, it is almost like a free swing at teams to just go out and start afresh almost. So I think it will be interesting to see what happens. And just the final thing I want to touch on before I slip across to Drew next, in terms of the sort of race for European places, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with Europe, so to speak, but Atletico Madrid, are they probably the biggest name that I mean, to say they're struggling would be unfair because they're only technically 2 points off a third. Well, they are 2 points off a third. But as you said, Simeone, possibly his last season, more talk of the likes of Thomas Partey moving on and others. Is it the season where it all kind of blows up for them, or do you think that they'll find enough to get it back into Europe?
Yeah, I still think they'll make the top 4. Interestingly, it's forgotten now, but they actually beat Liverpool twice, right before the lockdown really, and football was suspended. So, 2 major results for them really. But I still think they'll make the top 4. They've been indifferent in the league. Lots of draws, not so many defeats. But I just feel they'll have enough to get in the top 4. Just kind of think they'll do what they usually do and grind out wins. So, and to be fair, they've still got so many good players. João Felix has been hit and miss. But if they can get some kind of get him into some form coming back, I still think they'll have enough. I see they're trying today to get Carrasco's loan extended from China. So fingers crossed they'll have him. But I feel it will be Barca, Madrid, Sevilla, and Atletico Madrid will make the top four. I think that's my prediction.
Yeah.
Which has generally been the top four for the last few seasons, to be honest, give or take. And Valencia have been in and out. But I just think Valencia will miss out this year.
Yeah, it wouldn't really feel like Europe unless you had the likes of Atletico in that shake-up. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens. We'll of course be across the action when we next pod. I want to shift gears across to yourself now, Drew, and just talk a little bit about the Bundesliga. And of course we had the midweek matches in the cup as well. I watched the Dortmund Hertha game at the weekend. That was the only one I managed to catch. Interesting use, Joel touched on it there, of the crowd sound effects. I'm not going to lie, it caught me completely unawares because I was like, oh, hang on, fans are back. I hadn't realised they were going to try that. How did you find it, and how are you sort of adjusting to, I guess, since we last podded? Have you found that the Bundesliga has changed in terms of the approach? We've seen a Dortmund Bayern game since we last podded as well. Has the sort of ferocity of the game changed, in your opinion? Has it been more watchable?
I would say, just in terms of a quality standpoint, it's gotten better. But I think common sense would tell you that players were out of form for months on end, and the more you play, it'll come back to you. So, unrelated, Arsenal fans freaking out about losing a friendly because players aren't in form. Kind of, someone's expected, just give it a couple weeks, the players will be fine. No, the quality is greatly improved, but Dortmund started from a standpoint that was maybe better than the average competitor in the league. So they already kind of started with their heads down and doing what they needed to do. But regarding the crowd noises, that happened 2 weeks ago as well. It wasn't just last weekend. They've been testing it out. I mean, it's nice to give any semblance of some sort of atmosphere, but the manufactured nature of it, it's not the same. It's kind of the same things on loop, and things are played based off of what happens in the match. So I mean, they're making the attempt to, but it'll never be the same. But I think in some semblance of appreciation, I think the players might like that maybe 1% authenticity that you're getting. I know we've all played, so sometimes it does help you just kind of hearing things of positivity, from what is essentially a manufactured supporter base right now. So,
Drew, just sorry, I just got a question. In terms of the sound, is the music put through the PA system in the stadium, or is it just through the TV feed? Not music, sorry, the crowd effect.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know, the way it comes through on my end, it sounds like you can hear echoing. So it almost sounds like you can hear it at the matches. I don't know though. I will do the research. That was just my assumption. So I'm not quite sure. I do know that obviously there's a lot of the broadcasting people that are doing it in studio, like they're not actually at the match. So, and usually it's for us, it's been a lot of the times people who give you the pre-match and post-match comments are the ones that are also doing the commentary. It's not even a different team. It's the same people. So I'm not actually quite sure. It might be on a case-by-case basis. I don't really know. I'll look it up, but there's a good chance it is maybe just for the people at home, but I'm not even 100% sure, but that's a good question. So thanks for giving me homework for coffee.
Yes, something you can have a look into. In terms of on the pitch action, probably the big game of the weekend, as well as the Dortmund win over Hertha, was Bayern Munich beating Leverkusen 4-2. Two kind of stories come out of this really. One is Bayern are looking effortlessly efficient once again. I believe they also got through to the final of the German Cup last night as well, DFB Pokal, winning 2-1 over Eintracht. Just quickly check stats. But the other story was about Kai Havertz's mysterious injury, ruled him out of the game, and subsequent links with move to the Premier League. Just to pick up on that, first of all, we've seen the Timo Werner story develop. It seems like that's a done deal to Chelsea now, all over by the shouting. Is Kai the next player that we're looking at as moving on from the Bundesliga? Do you think? Because I feel like it's a year too soon if he was to move on.
I would agree. I think it's a year too soon. I think even Michael Ballack came out and said that he's at a really good place right now with Leverkusen for his development. He's there. For me, he's their key player. He's going to be getting probably some semblance of European football next season. It might not be Champions League, but Leverkusen have more than enough in the tank to get Europa League at bare minimum. And he's guaranteed to play. He'll get some rotation sometimes when he needs a bit of a rest, but I think right now it's not going to be. Say, for example, if he was to go to someone like Chelsea, think about how many good young players Chelsea have centrally. There will need to be more rotation. I don't think with buying Timo Werner, still having Tammy Abraham there, he's not going to be playing as a number 9 for Chelsea, in my opinion, obviously. So what would be the point of going to a place where all of a sudden you're thrust from being the key component to a Leverkusen side and then going to a Chelsea side where you're going to be constantly, in theory, competing every week? And you can speak to the fact of what his current ability already is, and it would put him ahead of someone like a Mason Mount or whatever have you. But all it would take is a couple of matches of poor form to then, someone else can take that opportunity, and then all of a sudden he's in a real competition for a place. So for me, I think it's a year too soon. I don't think he'll go to Chelsea just for the aforementioned reason. I think Chelsea have too many players essentially where. I don't think they need to spend money on the front. If anything, they should be spending on the center back. Maybe on a left back replacement for Marcos Alonso, who questionably is inconsistent. We'll say getting on a bit as well. Yeah, he's pushing 30. I'm pretty sure. My worry would be United. They're always still interested in bringing in big named young players. Obviously, with the persistent Jadon Sancho links as well. No one knows what's going to happen with Paul Pogba's future there. If he moves on, then you could even see them looking at Havertz as the direct replacement for him, and they'll have the cash for it as well, without question. They'll meet the Leverkusen's demands for the price without a problem if that was to occur. So, but then you also have to consider Bayern. But again, Bayern are a team with Hansi Flick that. The recruitment's a little bit different now. There's a reason why, there's links with Thiago potentially leaving, despite no matter how good he has been for Bayern since he's been there. And he's not even getting up there in age just yet. Even he might be facing, dropping. But Leon Goretzka had struggled mightily there, and he had to pull a Hulk move to be able to survive the new requirements with the new managers. So one never really knows. It's certain that he will leave. That's without question. I just think one more year at a place where he's guaranteed to play would make the most sense. But he's outgrown Leverkusen already in terms of what he can offer. And I think that was always the expectation, is that there's no way of keeping him. The only way to keep him would be to maybe go ahead and win the league. But the Leverkusen just don't have that in them. So it's a matter of, it's a matter of when, not if. But I do think one more year would really, really suit. For me, it's going to be. And obviously, Joel can speak to some examples from Spain as well. I know Josh can, likely from the Championship or even in England, where you have a young player who's doing quite good and has outgrown his current employer, but it doesn't mean they're ready for the next bigger jump. So you think of Memphis Depay as the prime example. I use that all the time because Memphis Depay, he wasn't just smashing in Eredivisie every week. He was playing incredibly well for the Dutch national team. He was playing well in Champions League. So it wasn't just on the domestic front where he was playing well, but you could still tell that despite his ability and his potential, it was just too soon for him, And then he went to United instead of doing a move where it would be from maybe, say, the Netherlands to France or Germany and then to United. For me, it's not that Havertz should, when he leaves, he shouldn't go to a bigger club. It's more he has to just pick the right one. But with all due respect and credit to him, he's shown incredible maturity and his friendship with Julian Brandt, who's very, very level-headed, who avoided interest from bigger clubs than Dortmund, decided to go to Dortmund for a bunch of different reasons. One, because he didn't want to leave Germany. Two, because it was a natural progression of going from Leverkusen to a side who was expected to challenge in Germany. They're expected to perform in Europe. So the expectations are quite high, and also it doesn't really hamper his ability to break into and stay into the German side. So there's a lot of things to consider. But
and of course the two will meet again in the podcast final, because Leverkusen came through the other semi-final 3-0 winners over Saarbrücken. I think, are they German third tier? Am I right?
Fourth tier.
Jesus. So we will see Leverkusen, Munich, or Bayern in the final on the 3rd of July, I believe it is. So He has another opportunity to shine. I don't want to focus too much more on Bayern because we've got a couple of other things to mention, but just sort of very briefly, are they favourites for the Champions League? They've come back earlier. They're probably going to be further advanced in terms of their playing time. Dark horse,
I think so. And if you really look at it, and the thing that we've mentioned before, and I've talked to with people on Twitter, it's that you look at the team, and it's not even just about the quality that they have in every single area of the pitch. It's the balance of the team and their ability to react to certain opponents and a lot of different tactical issues that can potentially arise. And they have a lot of really good experienced key players in key areas. And I know, and we've mentioned about this before, one of the prime examples of that is you have Alphonso Davies, who continues to shine and progress as a young player. But you've seen how well David Alaba has come on as a left center back, despite being a fullback for the entirety of his career. And it just shows you that level of experience, the commitment, how hard these players are working under the new manager to really fit into what the team needs right now. That's one of the key ingredients for me that can take a team far. The right pieces are firing at the right time. Robert Lewandowski has been absolutely fantastic, and I think there's no question in my mind that he's the best number 9 in Europe. You have Thomas Muller being revitalized is huge. They were just talking about this yesterday before the match, that you have a player who everyone lauded his goal record for Germany. His first 2 World Cups, he bagged 10 goals. He was scoring goals left, right, center, especially at club level. And all of a sudden now he's become one of the chief creators. And look at his assist record right now this season as well. So you have players who Flick's come in and he's figured out the things that he needs from the players to best put the results on the table. And they've all, without any sort of complaint, they've all adjusted to that, and they've all been playing incredibly well. And when you can bring some of the players they have on the bench to rotate in Europe, and then it's just I would say you'd have to. And I think form matters. And they're 7 points clear in League with 4 matches to go. That's essentially done. It would take a monumental collapse from them to not see out the League. So they can now actually turn a bigger eye to Europe, and with the amount of rotation they can pull in for the League, they should be fine there as well. So I think you'd have to consider it 100%.
Yeah.
When does the new season start, Drew?
When did the new season, or when does
the new season start? So when does next season start in Germany?
I want to say, from as far as I know, I'm pretty sure that they're trying to keep it roughly around the same time, because they do like to keep the winter pause, and they like to have that sort of 3.5 month period. That's kind of essential to the way they structure the league. So again, that's something I'll kind of have to double check, and I'll get back to just to make 100% sure. But I'm pretty sure they want to kind of keep it similar. Worst case scenario, if it doesn't start in August, it'll start early September, would be my guess if I had to really ask, given the way that they can structure it. I don't think they want to have a scenario where they're playing too many league fixtures in midweek if they're starting later, because that they do like to. The Bundesliga does a really good job of making sure that the league schedule can help out the teams that are playing in Europe avoid fixture congestion, that they give them the right amount of time to recover. That is kind of one of the things that one of the reasons why I like the way they schedule the league. So
the only reason I ask is you could end up with almost a PSG type scenario for Munich, couldn't you? Where if the gap's too great, they then become out of form almost by not playing going into this 2-week Champions League that is being talked about to happen in some stage in late August, isn't it? I think from the middle of August to the end of August.
Yeah, so, that's a fair point.
Because they've gone so early, there could be a lag of 4 weeks where they're not actually playing competitive games, whereas the English teams and particularly the Spanish teams are going to maybe have more of an advantage because they're playing competitive fixtures in the run-up to the Champions League.
Yeah.
And that's where Paris will fall foul, I'm sure, of this, and Lyon if they get through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually a really fair point. I didn't even really consider it from the other angle of how Champions League is scheduled. But for me, you'd have to imagine that the way Bayern is run, the way Flick trains them as a manager, that either they'll have an earlier comeback from their time off to focus that in mind, or they'll try to get prepared with doing friendlies. You know what I mean? I don't think we're going to have a scenario. Obviously, you're not going to have like the International Champions Cup that you would have before, so that's kind of out of the window. And then most clubs don't take that seriously in the first place. I think they'll structure their summer program with that in mind. I do think they're going to want to target it. And that's probably all I could probably say with any amount of certainty. But
yeah, it's one to keep a close eye on in terms of the new start dates for new leagues, and of course that European competition if it comes around. One team that won't be in Europe next year is Werder Bremen. We did touch on them in the last podcast, but they've since they played Eintracht Frankfurt at home, a team hopelessly out of form, and lost 3-0. Not ideal. And then they played at home again at the weekend and lost to Wolfsburg 1-0 to a late goal. They are in some serious shite right now, aren't they? I mean, they're now 3 points adrift in 17th. Fortuna Düsseldorf have kind of had a little bit of a run where they've only lost 1 in 5. Mainz, Union Berlin, Augsburg above them have all got enough on their day, you'd think, to pick up some results. Werder they're in a perilous position right now, aren't they? Is this one that you think is going to be another Hamburg, potentially a giant club dropping to the second tier?
Yeah, I just kind of think it's tough to say, or tough to see rather, just kind of what's going on at the moment, especially because before this season they had a manager in Florian Kohfeldt who a lot of people were tipping for some big things given his pedigree as he built up to becoming a manager. But if you look at it, there's a few issues. One, they just don't have the money to really recruit well enough to keep themselves out of the in the top half comparative to people around them. Tactically, they've been not very good. And then also you have someone like Yuri Pavlenka who, before going to Werder, I would have put him in a discussion as one of the top 3 or 4 keepers in the Bundesliga, but even he has kind of struggled. It's just going defensively. The organization is poor. I think there's just so many problem areas as well. I think the balance is off in the 11. A lot of the time you don't really have a really big source of goals. They brought in someone like Niklas Füllkrug, who was kind of their answer to solving the goal question, but that's not really settled quite well. Davy Selke went to the club. He's not scored any goal at all since being there. Their top scorer, Milo Rashica, likely is leaving this summer, and the rumor is he's going to go to Leipzig if and when Timo Werner leaves. So it's just, I think, in every facet of anything they could put on the table, nothing has panned out for them. They also did have big injury issues earlier on in the season that did not help get the ball rolling for them as well. So they started off already at a deficit when it comes to that, and they kind of just exacerbated moving forward from that. So I just don't see them actually kind of getting themselves out of it. It's going to take a couple monumental results, and you'd assume that going away to Paderborn, this coming weekend would be 3 points in the bag, but Paderborn has just, well, A, not to be offensive, of course, but B, Paderborn still have every chance to get at least a decent result. They can pull a draw out of that. They're only 5 points behind Werder. Both of them are trying to avoid the drop. So Paderborn has everything to play for. That's a 6-pointer. If they get that result against Werder, all of a sudden, they're only 5 points back if Fortuna, assuming Fortuna don't beat Borussia Dortmund, then they're only 2 points back off Werder. So it's all to play for them. And then I think the match after Paderborn, they have, let me just double check. They have Bayern at home. So even if they win against Paderborn,
3 points,
yeah, they have Bayern. So I think they're in dire straits. And unfortunately, I think we'll see them. I don't think they're going to save themselves. Even if they get to that promotion playoff. Or the relegation playoff from there, and that's not going to be an easy fixture either, because then you're going to potentially have someone like maybe Stuttgart, who have been in pretty solid form. So
and that game with Paderborn, I mean, looking at the team's defensive and attacking side, is either going to be the most horrendous 0-0 draw you've ever seen, or it's going to be 7-7. Like, I mean, both teams have conceded more than 60 goals this season. Both teams have only scored 33 for Paderborn.
You'll find this interesting as well. If Werder get that relegation playoff spot and Hamburg stay third and the Bundesliga 5, there's going to be that derby to see who goes up or comes down.
Imagine, yeah.
So that would be huge. Actually, I would actually even watch that. And I normally don't watch the playoff, but that would be pretty classic, actually.
That'd be worth a watch. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Just finally, before I unleash, I'm going to unleash Josh on the EFL. Which is going to be quite.
You can see he's like bouncing in his chair. He can't wait to get started.
I deliberately left him to last so that he can finish typing up his notes. But the last thing I just wanted to touch on in the Bundesliga was Hertha. We did mention them before. They did lose that game to Dortmund. They kind of, to me, watching that game, they just kind of ran out of ideas. They had some decent opportunities, but nothing concrete. Like, they didn't have a focal point for me. It didn't look like they were ever going to score. What is Project Hertha like at the moment? Because it was all a big, they're going to sign all these players in January, Klinsmann and everything. And then that all went a bit wonky. And now they seem to be back into a stable position where they are building towards the future. Are they a club that we should be keeping an eye on over the summer in terms of recruitment in or out?
I think absolutely, because they'll have the financial backing now to really sort of kind of bring in the players that they can't compete with in terms of like Dortmund and such, but the players just under that level, they'll be competing with someone like Leverkusen for talent of that level. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is Bruno Labbadia has done an excellent job since coming in to really kind of rein them in. Tactically, they're much improved. The technical ability in their game has also improved. They're not as painstakingly painful to watch anymore, which is a plus. But also, one of the biggest things that everyone always talks about is, they're the capital club and they're miles behind everybody else, and you don't normally see that. If you think about it, in Spain you have Madrid, you have Atletico Madrid. In England you have however many clubs in them, Arsenal and Chelsea chief among them. And in Italy you have Roma and Lazio. So Berlin's kind of an interesting thing. Union Berlin, it's good that there's now a Berlin derby in the top flight for Germany, but the fact that both their clubs are at best can hope for mid-table before the season, it's kind of telling, and everyone would always speak about that's one of the unique things about Germany. So now that you have the big capital club with financial backing, with a manager who has gotten to play improved football, you have to assume that maybe they're going to want to quickly put themselves in a discussion to get into the Europa League places next season. And given what happens with a few other clubs around them, I would say they maybe have a potential shot. I think Labbadia has done an excellent job with them. They already have a good, solid core of players they can really build with. Luka Bacchio has done quite well there. Yolaro Del Rosen is a player that everyone always talks about. Mateusz Kuna was brought in from RB Leipzig, and he was struggling there, and now he's gone to Hertha, and he has 4 goals and 7 appearances since moving, and he's played less than 550 minutes of football. So he's settled in, and Christoph Piatek is there as well. So they have a good attacking core of younger players. They have a couple of good defenders. Mittelstadt's only 23, Turan Arriga is only 22. So Arne Meyer is still there, and people forgot that he existed because of a string of injuries, but he was a very good young player in his own right before that. So they've got some ingredients to really kind of kickstart and move that project forward long term. And over the next 2 or 3 seasons, I think the goal for them should not 100% be to consistently break into the top 6 and build off that. And I think that's something that one of the only things that Bundesliga is missing is having, a team in the capital that was worthwhile watching every week. And if they can really pull that off, especially with the ground they have, the Olympiastadion, considering how the size of it, that's another source of income. If they can sell that out every week, imagine over 70,000 people, they're going to have a similar situation that Dortmund has. So I think definitely moving forward over the next 2 seasons, they're going to want to be, I think people should focus on them. I think if they do it right, as long as they don't go, we've seen this before though, as long as they don't go the route of someone like a Newcastle and just start spending money left, right, and center, but spending it on all the wrong targets, it's going to backfire. So as long as their recruitment stays focused with the ones that they do have, and they don't neglect the development of the young players that are already at the club, I think you're looking at a team that can potentially quickly get themselves into discussion to be in the top 6 every season. So.
Yeah, it's one of those teams, isn't it? Just to keep a little eye on, just to see what happens, and then we can judge. We can all judge for potentially the new season. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Josh, it's your time to shine now. Is that complicated that Joel's come back right in time to your talk? So for those people who don't know, give us a whistle-stop tour of what's happened. We'll keep the Premier League separate because we'll all discuss that in a minute. But in terms of EFL, Championship, Leagues 1 and 2, lots happened this week. So
yes,
give us a whistle-stop tour of what has been decided and the outcomes of those decisions.
Well, I'm going to start with the easy one. The Championship will be back sooner than the Premier League. No, sorry, not sooner than the Premier League. Premier League's got some fixtures in on Wednesday. Next week. So Saturday 20th is when we'll see the Championship kick off again. I'm sure Joel is possibly not best pleased with the Championship coming back with the predicament Hull in at the moment. But I'm sure we'll mention form tables elsewhere across the EFL. So yeah, that kicks off with Fulham versus Brentford. It's the first fixture back for them. And they expect to kind of roll through their fixture list a bit like the Premier League will do as well. Still expecting playoffs from that. They haven't done anything different really with that league. That's just coming back. Then we get to, well, which one do you want, Kris? They're both pretty extraordinary stories. We've got League One and League Two.
Go from the bottom up. Go from
the bottom up. Okay, so the EFL this week had what they called an extraordinary general meeting with everybody, all the chairmen of the league, of the clubs that this was going to affect. So that was League One, League Two, to ask them what they were going to do. In League Two, it was 23 out of 24 chairmen agreed to curtail the league. The only team that wanted to play on, interestingly, was Forest Green Rovers. Mainly because their form is actually quite good and they could have snuck into a playoff place, maybe, if football would come back. I think because they're so small, they're not as they didn't really need the gate receipts as much. And Dale Vince, if anybody doesn't know, owns a huge energy company, looks after a lot of the wind farms around the UK. So he's not short of a few pennies if they did need any extra cash influx to get them kind of through this period, which can't always be said for other clubs at that kind of point. But we do have some definitives from League Two. Swindon, Crewe and Plymouth are all up. And they are going to play playoffs, which is kind of interesting because I'm not really sure how those teams feel about or what kind of friendlies they're going to be able to really get in that time. But it is Colchester versus Exeter and Northampton versus Cheltenham, who are going to be the teams in the playoffs. And then who's going down? This is where it might take a little longer. Look at the table. It says Stevenage. So interesting from this, I should say for both methods to finish the league, they've used points per game and they've just gone a flat points per game. There's no form guides been used in this or anything else because, you know what, the more metrics you kind of add into this, the more and more deeper you go, oh, this isn't fair, this isn't fair, this isn't fair. And to be fair, football kind of isn't fair. You know, how many of these teams have been caught out because there's penalties that haven't been given in their 12th game in the match week that could have cost them a couple of points in this whole scenario. So I think that what they've done, or at least they voted upon this way of finishing. There were other proposals. From memory, Tranmere put one together that we'll get onto them, but favourably had Tranmere staying up. And Barnsley, I think, were the other club that put together a proposal, as well as the EFL just going in straight with, here's what we think we should do, and you guys just vote on it. Yeah, just to kind of steer the meeting. And it turned out that their one of just points per game curtail the season. It's the one they were going to go with. So yeah, I say Stevenage, they are bottom of the table at the moment. However, Macclesfield, who are just above them, they are 3 points above Stevenage. There is only one club going down as well, to say, from League Two this year, due to Bury, if you remember, all the way earlier in the season, unfortunately, having to fold and left the EFL. So, yeah, Macclesfield didn't pay or were a bit late with their March wages, which isn't the first time they've been late with wages this season. You know, they've been docked points for it before. Let's put it that way, this season for it. And there is a disciplinary hearing ongoing of whether or not they should be docked further points for this indiscretion. if they're docked more than three, if they're docked 3 points on points per game, they would go down. No, points per game, yes, they'd go down. But if they're docked it from their overall points per game total, this is where it gets confusing. They'd stay up. There's some odd maths in here depending on where it gets taken from. And this is one of the big disputes they're also happening, is Macclesfield captain has said, well, you're taking the 7 points off our overall total, not off our points per game, which is how you should do it. And basically they're all trying to find ways where it could come to their benefit. But I think the long and short of it is, I think that if I was going to dock Macclesfield any points for this, I'd give them a hefty enough points deduction that doesn't matter which way you split it, you're going down. Because I think it's just going to cause so many issues in here. And another thing they also need to sort out is, when is the National League going to come back? Because they don't want to relegate a side who then doesn't have football for potentially, well, Kris, I know you're a few more steps down the pyramid than with your Sunday League side. But in terms of when you're expecting to go back into kind of just Sunday League football, it's not going to be this side of Christmas, I imagine.
My personal view is it won't be. Other people locally seem to think, because you've got the issue of the latest UK rules that states you can essentially hold a training session of groups of 6. A lot of teams down here, local size or grassroots teams, have now gone back to training, which I still think is mad. So they're all out in parks in groups of 6. But if you're a club like mine, where it's just me managing it, you can't really patrol and keep command of people like that. So yeah, I think realistically, for me, I'd be surprised if we're back before Christmas, and surely that would be the same for National League or clubs without high-end facilities, you'd think.
Yeah, I think that's kind of imagine maybe that some teams are more suited. It's weird, in the kind of National League, you have got some fairly big league clubs there. You've still got kind of Hereford down there from memory. AFC Fylde have got like brand new facilities, being quite a small or had recent big investment, similar to kind of Salford City in that kind of regard, with how much investment they've had in their facilities. So there are some clubs there that would be better placed to deal with it rather than others. But for the moment, the National League haven't said anything other than the fact that we kind of anticipate, probably as early as Monday, that Barrow, who were the champions or declared champions, will be coming up to the league, onto league football. So it's just a case of what will happen with this kind of Stevenage and Macclesfield. It's a case of one of these two teams is probably going to go down unless something extraordinary happens with the National League and they don't return until Christmas time. But as with everything with the EFL, it has been kind of slow moving. The initial meeting for how they were going to sort out the leagues was due to be done back in May, even April, kind of end of April. It was scheduled to be done. So yeah, it's not something they do particularly quickly.
No, more efficiently. It would.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it? Did you want to touch on that Mark Palios talk? Because there's two that I want to focus on really. Mark Palios of Tranmere and his proposal, and also the somewhat outspoken comments of Darren Ferguson.
Barry Fry from Peterborough. There's many. There's many in League One. The League Two chairman that kicked off. Stevenage have kicked off by saying Macclesfield should go down because they didn't pay their players' wages. Macclesfield are saying the EFL are against them. We shouldn't be docked points. So it's getting very messy down at the bottom end, which is completely understandable when you look at the kind of, I think we said last time we were together, Kris, that when you drop into the National League, there is a chance some of your players are then going to go part-time rather than full-time. The club goes semi-professional in some cases. That's a huge thing for these clubs. we'll get on to Tranmere when we go to League One about some of their problems that they've come out very vocal about the whole thing, which hasn't necessarily helped when Dale Vince, the Forest Green Rovers chairman, has been baiting some of the Tranmere fans over the fact that they have been, they've been relegated under this system.
Yeah,
but
it seems a strange choice of things to do, isn't it, as well, given their position.
They were quite healthy in the league. He did get a lot of stick because I think he'd said it was the right decision, that overall it's a sensible decision that he could tell the league, even though they wanted to kind of progress through it and continue playing. I think overall it's the right decision has been made. But should we go to the unruly child of the EFL that is League One?
Let's do the League One. Yeah, there's lots going on here.
Yeah, so we'll start with the definites again. Coventry City, their first time they finished above 5th in about 20 years. It's been at least that. It's been crazy what's been going on at Coventry, but they're finally back in the Championship.
Great to have them back as well.
Absolutely. 67 points, so 34 games played as well. So most teams have played at least 35 in there. A few had some decent cup runs, which we'll get to, which is why they played fewer games. And Rotherham as well, who are doing a bit of you'd say like a West Brom, bit of a yo-yo between leagues, having just been relegated to League One, have come straight back up to Championship. And looking at their squad, unless they don't do big investment, we'll probably see them in League One in the 2021 season. And then, the playoffs, which are also going to continue. They're going to be the only fixtures. Again, the teams that, in terms of the points and the way that the league was kind of sitting, it was Oxford United, Portsmouth, Fleetwood and Peterborough who were going to go into the playoffs, sitting 3rd through 6th respectively. However, because of points per game, cheeky little Wycombe Wanderers, who have got a game in hand, had only played 34 and were on the same points, 59, as Peterborough and Sunderland, although Sunderland have played 36 games, have got a better points per game than Oxford, Portsmouth and Fleetwood, who all had more points, and Peterborough United, which then meant that Peterborough then got kicked out of the playoff position and Wycombe go into 3rd. So if anybody has access to the BBC website or wants to have a look at the EFL table, you will see Wycombe Wanderers in 3rd on 59 points, then Oxford United, Portsmouth and Fleetwood below them on 60 points. With they've missed out the column for points per game that makes that table make sense. But it looks a little odd at the moment. And you can almost see understandably why Barry Fry, Director of Football at Peterborough United, is not best pleased about the situation.
Good old Barry Fry.
Because they have missed out, unfortunately. He's very outspoken anyway, I think, is Mr. Fry. Mm-hmm. So I think, should we leave that one there? We'll just move on. There was a few other jumping around in terms of the middle of the league as well. Ipswich have recorded their lowest ever league position, I think, of 11th in the 3rd tier of league football, which isn't great for them. Then down to the bottom. Teams that are going down. Bolton Wanderers and Southend United was, to be honest, if you continued football, you could probably have said they were already down and saved the players, 3 months of work, because on 19 points and 14 points respectively, they were almost down anyway. They were doomed. Where 30, absolutely. So Tranmere Rovers are the team that unfortunately have been caught out by this. In terms of points per game, they were on 34 points get played. AFC Wimbledon are on 35. 3 points difference between them, but on goal difference and a bit of how it kind of works with points per game, yeah, Tranmere are relegated. They're pretty aggrieved generally because they went pretty heavy in terms of investment over January to try and keep themselves up. And I think that's one of the things that having the league kind of curtailed so early, those players were just getting into form.
Yeah.
Tranmere in their last 5 games picked up 10 points. So in terms of form tables, they're up there with kind of promotion leading form tables, which I think is where their biggest things come into, because they've beaten some big teams and some rivals around them to get into that position. And for it to unfortunately be dashed, and they've made this kind of proposal that their proposal kind of brought in form into it because of the fact that they've made this investment and they'd pushed so hard that they're on this great run of form that is almost gone, well, actually, to be fair, you were rubbish for 30 games previous. So they kind of ignored that for them. So you can kind of feel for them from that perspective. I think they're now going on they've had to unfortunately make a lot of staff redundant because of the financial pressures that this has caused. Because I think, to be honest, it would have happened if they ended up getting relegated anyway, that they'd have to let go of a lot of staff members. You hear it up and down the leagues that, the likes of like Sunderland, and Villa, when they kind of had their big drops, was because they went big every January to try and bring in big signings to give them those 12, 15, 20 points or so that they needed to keep them in the league. Tranmere did exactly that. It looked to be working for them, but because the league's been curtailed, they've, kind of been caught out by this, that they've done everything they kind
left in a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why, it's pretty mad how it's kind of ended. But it's kind of, football isn't fair, as I kind of said. It's never really been fair. I see how, Tranmere will be protesting the EFL anthem when it plays before every game, in the same way Man City do with the Champions League. But
Imagine.
I kind of, it's one of those that's not ideal for Tranmere fans, and they're going to be probably one of the most vocal EFL teams you'll see across this period, as well as Peterborough, because they've both been a little bit shafted by the system.
It feels to me a little bit like it feels to me a little bit like the Championship you kind of understood coming back.
They're big enough, the Championship, in terms of the teams that they've got, that they can maintain social distancing, and in terms of finances of like running the club. You say for some League One and especially League Two sides, the furlough system that's in place is actually covering a lot of these clubs, especially lower down the division, where we talk about players that earn £60,000 a week. Down there it's £60,000 a year, £30,000 a year, and that the furlough system does help them. It is a lot of the playing staff are on these systems, and managers as well. Down at that level. It's
kind of a weird setup, isn't it, in terms of financially? Because you just look at those clubs in League One and League Two, and you do, whatever happens, somebody was going to get screwed. Which I might, before we finish there, I'll touch on what's happened in France this week, where it's all been reversed. I do wonder if there might be some kind of story to run. I guess we'll see with that. But I do just want to kind of open the floodgates a little bit to the other guys as well, in terms of we've got the Premier League back next week, or that is coming back next week. We've got is it Villa and Sheffield United and Arsenal, Man City next Wednesday, I think it is.
It is Wednesday.
And we've seen things gradually creeping back in. Let me ask Drew first of all. Drew, are you sort of looking forward to having Premier League? Obviously, we sort of yourself, me, and Josh all follow Arsenal, as listeners will probably know by now. Are you kind of looking forward to it based on what you've seen with Bundesliga football? Do you think the Premier League will go down a very similar avenue, or do you think the quote-unquote greatest league in the world will suffer because of what's going on at the moment?
Well, I'm not looking forward to the fan base overreactions every week. I'll tell you that.
No,
at no point. It's going to be tricky for me. I kind of feel like there's such a – whereas for me, Bundesliga has more parity in terms of clubs' ability to get their players back to a certain level. The cultures are all very similar, despite clubs being very different. I think in the Premier League, you have so many different potential ideologies based off of management, because there's so many different types of managers in the league that are from different backgrounds. You have the ownership that thinks a little bit differently. I think it might actually take the Premier League just a little bit more time to get things up to scratch, maybe that you might see in Bundesliga. Doesn't mean it won't happen. I just think it might not be as straightforward. Everything in Germany is far much more streamlined. With the Premier League, still it seems like every club is very much their own entity, and they only come together globally as, for the English football community on certain matters. But after that, it's very much we're separate. We're doing our kind of thing this way. You're doing your thing that way. So I'm not quite sure how it's going to pan out. Yeah, I guess it's just my initial thought. Hopefully, Arsenal's form continues. Went in to the break, undefeated in 6 in the league. So it'd be nice if that was to continue. But yeah, for base level value thought, that's kind of where I'm at the moment. So
yeah, so it's going to be quite a weird experience, just having so much football as well. John, I wanted to bring that up with you. How do you sort of feel about? Particularly, obviously, you follow Holland, the Championship. The focus is, I feel like the way it's been reported, and as Josh has touched on there, I feel like it's all been focused on the Premier League. There's been very little discussion about the Championship and the fact that we could have, for good or bad, we could have Leeds United back in the Premier League. West Brom are flying high. There's some quite big clubs down the bottom end. For me, the Championship is actually quite exciting. Has there been sort of quite a lot of excitement in terms of from a whole perspective, and because they're fighting to stay up, of course. But is it exciting for you to have it back?
Yeah, I think it's interesting since we were last on. Well, we last were together and I was on with you guys. It was, what will it look like? How will it be? There were so many unknowns. And I think now it almost feels like we're ready for it back. And it almost feels like seeing the Bundesliga, how it's worked, that it's going to feel... It feels right for it to come back. So I guess there's some excitement. Directly from a whole perspective, we was hoping the season would end with the players as they are at this minute. But that said, it was on a horrendous run with loads of injuries. So who knows how it will all come back. There's still a lot to play for in the Championship, isn't there? There's the top 2, which Leeds West Brom will probably go up. You'd think the playoffs is then up for anybody. And then there's a relegation as well. So it feels right it's coming back. I think what we maintain from the start was if they can do it safely and if the conditions are right for it to come back, then it should. And I feel like at this point now, especially with the success the Bundesliga has been in terms of the getting it back and getting it back safely, then I think it's right it should come back. And that said the same for the Premier League as well. I think we're all ready for it now, and I think there's still a lot to play for in terms of that. Obviously, Liverpool will get the trophy which they need and they've wanted for so long, but there's still a lot to play for in the Premier League as well. The top 4's tight. We need the relegation sorting now in terms of that's tight in terms of there's 5 or 6 teams who could potentially go down at this point. So I feel now there's an excitement in terms of it feels right. I think before there was an anxiety about it, that is it right for it to coming back? Is football more important than people's lives? And clearly it's not still, but I feel with the way it's going in the Bundesliga and the test figures we're getting week on week and day in terms of players tested, and the environment feels right for it to come back and come back safely. Clearly, we're miles away from fans going back into ground in terms of, the thought of 60,000 people in the stadium now just feels odd.
Yeah.
How long that will feel odd for, we don't know. But I feel this is the next best solution that we've got. And this is probably going to be until the end of the year in terms of how it's set up now. So I feel we need to get used to it. But I'm looking forward to it coming back now.
Yeah.
It's felt like a weird it's like one of those summers where we don't have a tournament.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't have the Euros of the World Cup, and it's like it just drags, and it's felt like that. The last week, I think at first it was a little bit like, football's not important. I think as long as it's gone on, we've all started to get more excited seeing teams back training and transfer talks picked up again and players moving, and it's feeling a little bit more back to normality, even though it's so far from that.
Yeah, agreed. Josh, I'm going to give you a nice, fun topic. I just want your opinion on, which is less statistical and doesn't require you to look as much up. So hopefully this will be nicer for you. Lyle Taylor, what's your thoughts on this? For those people who don't know this story, Lyle Taylor's a 30-year-old striker at Charlton Athletic. He's done his due diligence in terms of he's been around the clubs. I think he's been at Wimbledon and he's played some lower league. A deal to join a higher club. I don't think it's actually been officially confirmed whom, although I think it was Brentford were fishing in January, but apparently there is a deal that he has got a contract offer to join a bigger club than Charlton in inverted commas. He's essentially come out this week and said, nah, I'm done. I'm being honest. I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to risk injury, etc. Lee Bowyer, for me, somewhat surprisingly, has kind of backed him and said he's done brilliantly. Well, I don't know where I sit on this one. Do you admire the honesty of the player essentially downing tools, or do you think that that's not acceptable given the fact that he's still got a duty? And as Chris Sutton said on the BBC, he's essentially breaching his contract by refusing to play. So in theory, shouldn't be paid or should be sacked. So where do you sit on that one?
I mean, there's going to be a lot of these about players that are kind of out of contract or expecting to be elsewhere come the 30th of June. In terms of games that Lyle Taylor's going to miss, should we put in inverted commas, that if his contract was going to be there and he'd move on, which he would be totally entitled to do. He's only missing, I think, 2 fixtures for them. A game against Hull City and then QPR. I think are the only ones that fall in that side. And then the rest are in July. So I think from that point of view, I kind of see where he's at. In terms of the club and why probably Lee Bowyer has gone from, he's like, look, you're going to miss 2 games for us in the grand scheme of things. At least he knows about it. At least he's been honest and he's not, we're not talking like the game, 27th of June, he's just finished against QPR, scored a hat-trick, and then said, oh yeah, by the way, I'm off on Wednesday or whenever the 30th so happens to fall. Because we've just seen similar happening at Liverpool, for example. Nathaniel Klein, who's out of contract, Liverpool have said, we're not renewing it. 30th of June, pack out your locker. See you later. And they're, huge sides. We know their kind of finances, pushing for the Premier League title, chance for Klein to get, Premier League's medal, potentially, if he foresees certain fixtures. I don't know how many he's played for Liverpool, on the top of my head, how many appearances, how close he is to that number. But
I think of many, to be fair.
Yeah, but bearing in mind, they did similar with Moreno. He ended up with a Premier Champions League medal. Bearing in mind, he hadn't played a lot in that campaign. So, I think it's, shaft before you're shafted kind of thing. He's just made his move and at least he's in control of his destiny. And to be fair, if he's got a contract already signed, sealed and sorted, and Lee Bowyer said, oh, it's ridiculous, what does it matter to him anyway? He's leaving in less than 2 weeks. So yeah, I kind of back him for that kind of decision and just for complete honesty. And you know what? He might line up for Charlton for the next couple of games. And Bowyer's just said to him, yeah, he's had a change of heart, but at least he's given him that option.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd feel as a manager. I tend to sort of come down on the side of dereliction of duty a bit from a player. I sort of feel.
But don't you think it's because of his age? I mean, he's 30. I mean, you can completely see it from his perspective. He's been offered a 4-year contract.
Yeah.
And maybe a Premier League club. I see Bournemouth are linked or Celtic are linked as well. I think if he's 21, you're probably not doing that because you feel that even if you've got a really bad injury, you'll be out for 6 months. You're still 22. you can go get, and that move would still be there. I think at 30. I mean, if he hasn't signed the contract because he can't with this club, and he goes and does his cruise ship in his first game back, he's not getting that deal, is he? He's not getting the 4-year contract on huge wages. So I can completely see both sides from it, to be honest. But clubs are quick to do it, like you just said when on your client. Clubs will happily do it to players, so players really have got a right to do it to clubs too.
Yeah. I suppose in theory he could do his cruise ship slipping downstairs at home, couldn't he? And the club would bin him off. So
and it's not like they're short in the striking department as well. They've got someone like Tom Mohamed, who I'll know from my time at Brighton. Brighton legends. In terms of he knows how to score at that level, that's kind of his level. He could easily get them 10 goals to the rest of the season. He'll be the hero that keeps them up, and nobody will be talking about Lyle Taylor. This only will come up if, their 4 other forwards go on a massive scoring drought. And then to be honest, it's his fault, to be fair. If the teammates don't pull away.
I do take that side of the argument. And I think in Tom Mohamed, he played for Mallorca as well, Joel. I'm sure he did.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think that's where we got him from. We got him from Almira.
Can I say I hope he did? Otherwise,
Mallorca was his club before.
He's in between. The other sort of quick topic I wanted to ask Drew on in particular on this one. Drew, there's talk of Man City. Well, there is ongoing talk of Man City with this whole sort of Champions League banning and whatnot. The CAS have restarted their claim, or the discussions have restarted. Man City have sort of essentially said, no matter what it costs, we will fight this, blah, 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 blah. There's a bit of double standards coming. And I wanted to ask you about this because obviously it could be something that Bayern might have to answer questions of in the long run as well with regards to how they're managed. Nothing at this stage, but it's something that people have discussed before. I don't really understand why Man City are able to challenge this, really. They're banged to rights. They've been done for... They've essentially admitted they breached fair play. Do you think that they're going to get away with this? Or as there's talk that they might just get a hefty fine or the ban will be halved? Surely you're either guilty or you're not.
For me, I think it's directly correlated to the fact that you have so many people that are in bed with the larger authorities in UEFA and FIFA, especially when you have particular ownership groups can be and will be directly linked to those positions of authority. There's no point at that point. So I think for me, it was simple. You can't look at it at a case-by-case basis. If you're found to breach certain rules, here's the fine. It doesn't matter who you are, and that's it. And I think that's one of the things Arsene Wenger maybe wants to kind of champion is ridding the corruption that's obviously rife within the footballing hierarchy, and just everything needs to be streamlined, right? So, and it doesn't really help that Man City essentially can do whatever they want with money. So no matter what hefty fine, of course they'll pay it. They'll just that fine will get bankrolled and paid for. So I don't think that's fair. If there was another club who breached rules, whether knowingly or unknowingly, I don't know how you could do it unknowingly, obviously, but they would be able to bail themselves out in some other fashion. So I don't think you can look at it and say, give clubs the opportunity. There should be structured fines, penalizing actions based off of the severity of the offense, and that's kind of where it ends. And something as simple to me as simple as that happens, you're going to have situations like this where clubs can just say, "Oh, that's fine, I'll pay it," and they get off scot free. And what's worse is that they know it, and you can read the things that they were saying. You can look at their actions, and they know they were breaching rules, and they also know they were going to get caught, but they didn't care. The fact that they didn't care tells you everything you need to know. So for me, those things have to change 100%.
We should say City do say they've got definitive proof to say that they are innocent as well, albeit a contradictory email that is leaked. That says they'd rather, if they can spend £10 million on lawyers for the next 10 years, or was it £50 million on lawyers, then that's a good deal for them. World-class lawyers in place.
It's almost arrogance, wasn't it? They came out with that statement. It's like, no matter what it costs, we'll pay it. It's like, okay, so what's the point in having rules then? And if they do miss a year, Joel's probably the best one to ask on this one. Does Pep decide that he's had enough of having a club built for him for the third time and wander off into the sunset for another year in MLS or something? Because he's almost. I almost feel with Pep, putting my slight bias against him aside. I've always felt that he sort of has this kind of. He works the media brilliantly, in credit. He knows what to say and when. And one of the criticisms when he was at Barcelona and at Bayern was that after it got a bit too hot, he kind of ran away for a year. With Man City, he's always said, no, I love it. I want to stay. I want to build a dynasty, etc. Recently, that's sort of, he hasn't said anything different to that, but you almost get the impression that if he couldn't be in the Champions League, maybe he'd consider his options. Would that be fair?
I think he'll definitely stay for the next season. I think either way he'll walk away after that season. Yeah, I think that's him done. I think it'll be the longest he's spent at any club. I think 5 years. I don't see him being a Ferguson, Wenger staying 20 years at Man City. I think he'll have his eye on a different project, be it in Italy or with a national team. It's interesting. Will he stay will he do a plus 1 year if they get banned from the Champions League for a year? Maybe will he wait it out and try and win the Champions League with Man City, or will it fire them up to win it this season? I really don't know. I just don't see him being there past the end of next season, to be honest. I think, you can look at it different ways. It can be that he gets out when it gets going and it gets a bit hot, or you can look at it that his method is very intense. And if you look at the end of any tenure he's had at any club, or you use Bayern and Barca, he's become burnt out. And I think he's starting to see signs of that this season. That he looks tired. He's not himself. Looks frustrated. But I think he's definitely going to stay next season. And it wouldn't surprise me if they go and win the league next season, his final year, and then they would walk away. But I think he really, really wants the Champions League at Man City. I think he wants a Champions League to win it outside of winning it with Barcelona, because it's always put against him. Well, he had these unbelievable players. I think if he could do it without Messi, for example, then I think he would then, not that he needs to validate his coaching ability to anybody, but I think it would allow him to do that, to be honest.
I think also not winning it with Bayern was the thing, and then people kind of use that as a stick to beat him with, saying, "Oh, you can win it with Barca, but you can't win it with Bayern." Like, are you really that level of manager? So I think to himself, maybe almost to himself, he has something to prove as well. But I think it would have been more credible to win it with Bayern than City, but that's a whole other matter. So.
And I think he's got a lot of work to do with that Man City squad as well, by the way. There's a lot to do with that City squad in terms of players that are aging, players that are moving on, and there's a lot of rebuilding to do in an awkward summer, isn't there?
Yeah, I think he said that, hasn't he, in his time, that he needs 2 or 3 players every summer to come in, and he just hasn't had that kind of backing. I know we're talking, it sounds crazy to say that, the manager of Manchester City, one of the richest clubs in world football, hasn't had the backing, but when you look at what he's kind of asked for and what they're kind of ending up with, it's not necessarily the tools he needs for his job. And I think whereas he had a player like Messi who could necessarily bail him out of those indiscretions, that if he didn't necessarily get the centre back he wanted, it's fine. He's still got the best player in the world there, and he's still got this incredible forward line. It's a bit like Liverpool in the early years of Klopp, or even Brendan Rodgers. They had a terrible defence under Brendan Rodgers, but they had this, the SAS at the front end, and they could just win you games. It was fine.
Outscore opponents,
I think it is interesting, Man City transfer policy, though. I know they've spent so much money, but what is the record signing? 60 million? Is it?
And not stellar names.
They've never gone above. I mean, the majority of the players, if you go Bernardo Silva, Benjamin Mendy, De Bruyne, Sterling, Mahrez, they're all about 50 million. Laporte was 50 million. It seems like they've got a ceiling on, and he always says this, and people kind of are bewildered when he says it, but he says we are not at the level of your Barcelona, Real Madrid, your PSGs to go and buy players for 120, 130 million pounds. And there's something in that, because they're never ever linked with those players. They've never been linked with Mbappe since he's been there, have they? But Liverpool are. it's interesting that they seem to have a policy where they'll go to a level, and I almost feel like that with wages as well. Apparently, Liverpool blew them out the water with Van Dijk with wages when it came to it. So it's a weird one.
They seem to sign like Leroy Sané. They will make a profit on if they sell him on to Bayern Munich. It seems bad that that's the structure.
I mean, look at Bayern's business when he was there as well. I mean, Bayern were never before that. They were never a club that would spend gobs of money on big players because they themselves are run well financially. So they'll never spend more than sort of maybe 30, 40, or 50 million pounds on a player, despite being a top 4 club in the world. They have a very good financial backing. They could probably afford it, but they would rather spend 40 million pounds per player on 3 players than 120 million pounds on 1 player. And I think that's when you're focusing on squad building, that's the exact kind of mentality you need. And for me, I think with the way Pep operates, in terms of the types of players he's looking for, he's not looking at the best name possible on the market. He's looking at, can this player do what I need that player to do in that position? And that's why you have someone like Rodri come in City, who maybe people wouldn't have thought they would have targeted, but Rodri was the exact player they actually needed. And I hate kind of admitting that kind of thing, but it's rare where Pep-led teams actually get transfer business wrong if you look at it. Even if they might overspend for whatever reason, people would argue that it should have spent that much on Kyle Walker. But Kyle Walker is that type of fullback that City needed and Pep needed for his system. And I think that's kind of where that's the value of it. He's looking at what he needs, not what the name is. And maybe some other managers wouldn't really kind of take it that way, or maybe some other clubs as well. I mean, Joel can speak this better than anybody, but Barcelona so often look at the name before if the piece fits the puzzle. It's more about that clout. But with City and with Pep, and I think he showed that historically, where it's about he's trying to buy the right player for what he needs, and I think that maybe that's why you'll see them. They'll never be in the market for those. They don't need Mbappe. They could probably go and get him if they really wanted to. They could probably get Mbappe tomorrow. But if they need him, does he really fit in? Is it worth the expenditure? That takes away from being able to bring in multiple other players to suit the need of rotation and. Yeah, and they fit tactically and technically. So
I think what it spells out, and if you use Barcelona's example, it's a direct comparison. Is there's a strategy with Man City's transfer, whereas a team like Barcelona, the signing of Griezmann. I mean, they didn't really need Griezmann. It was just they signed Griezmann and they ended up with him, and now they put him on the left side of the front three, and it didn't really work. Whereas I think Man City have got a clear strategy of what they need, and they go and get what they need, and they'll do it in the most efficient way rather than just signing names. There's definitely a strategy behind what they're doing, and I think that was, United have kind of come through that trend a little bit now, but under Van Gaal and the late part of Moyes and Van Gaal and even early Mourinho, United were just signing names as well, and they liked the strategy, and I think Man City have been consistent in what their strategy is, and Chelsea now have a strategy. It feels under Lampard you can see clearly what they're trying to do. They sign young players and developing players. So I think City's strategy is spot on. It's just interesting what the next steps are, because they definitely need 3 or 4 players, don't they?
Yeah.
Definitely a left back, definitely a centre half, 2 centre halves probably.
Arguably a midfielder for Fernandinho's decline as well. Yeah, it is.
I mean, the jury's out on Benjamin Mendy, really, isn't it? I mean,
massively, yeah. I mean, he's he's very talented, but he's not particularly good defender. Even João Cancelo, I would say, is disappointed based upon what he did at Juventus. But I agree, and I think an aging Sergio Aguero, a sort of fluttering in and out Gabriel Jesus, and the fact that Leroy Sané is openly suggesting he wants to move on could be a lot of surgery to be looked at. Good stuff. Okay, we'll probably leave it there for today. Just before we do shoot, I do just want to make a quick mention of Italy and France. Italy in particular. Serie A, I believe, is still scheduled to be returning fairly soon. Nothing much has happened in the Italian game this week other than Gonzalo Higuain looking quite chunky in training. If you haven't seen that photo, look it up. It's quite interesting to see him next to Ronaldo. It's kind of like your dad turning out for your Sunday League team with the son who's been in training for 6 weeks and the dad who still thinks he's got it. It's kind of one of those sort of pictures. Quite amusing. But yeah, everything's still on schedule for the Italian game to return. France will go into more when Lana's back on, but basically it's a shit show. All sorts going on. The French League have essentially said, or recently said, actually, we could have come back and played games, guys. And Toulouse, who were relegated, along with Amiens, are now not relegated. Toulouse, who had won 3 games all season and were absolutely banking on 100% going down, and now staying in Ligue because the French game has decided to change their minds and have just essentially said they're going to have a truncated season next year with more teams, which, fingers crossed, at time of recording, still means Lorient will be promoted. I hope so. But yeah, it's just a giant mess, really. Ligue 1 made the decision, Ligue 2 made the decision, and have now just spectacularly gone back on it. So, as I say, when Lana's back on, we'll probably go into that in a little bit more detail. I think it's fair to say it will be an interesting season next season for the French teams in terms of what happens next, given how much of a mess it is. So yeah, we'll touch on that next time we're on. But yeah, as usual, thank you very much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed our podcast and our ugly mugs, Drew's got the right idea. Stay behind the camera; it's safer. But yeah, if you have enjoyed the episode, please do let us know. Thank you again for the views and the watches. Really appreciate it. We've had some really good numbers, and that's not what it's about for us. We'd be here if there was one person, but it's really nice to know that we're entertaining you guys. Thank you as always to Danny and the ABW crew for hosting us as well. Much appreciated. And of course to Joel, for Josh, sorry for pressing all the buttons, and to Joel and Drew for joining me as well. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, as usual.
And we'll be back. Not sure when, not sure where, not sure how. No, we will. We will be back. We'll probably leave it sort of a week, 10 days, maybe 2 weeks or so, just to give it a chance to sort of everything to kick back in. But if there is any major stories or anything that we're really itching to get on and discuss, then you might have a little surprise in your inbox. That sounds like a Carry On film line, doesn't it? If ever I heard one. But speaking of Carry On lines, until next time, keep your beard strong. Not like mine, it looks like pubes. And your glasses trending like Joel's. Until next time, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you very soon.